Morning, 10 a.m. On the East Coast of the United States, which is where I am. We have a bit of a challenge. I'm kind of holed up in this bedroom because there's construction happening. So we should use that into practice, the distraction of the noise. A lot of the practice that we do, or for the most part, what we do, we practice meditation to bring that kind of awareness into daily life. So let's use that. If you do hear this noise, because I know I will, to be able to maintain the practice with those distractions, because that'll just help us bring the practice into daily life. I know we do have a couple of new people, so I may do a brief review. And those of you who come on a regular basis, don't take the review as, oh, here we are, hearing the same thing over and over again. I think the word meditation translates either in Tibetan or Sanskrit as habituation. So if we think in terms of that, that's what we're doing. So it's good to kind of really, for me it is, just doing this class and going over the basic technique all the time, just reinforces it. This really strengthens it, I do want to say, for those of you, we'll do a little bit of instruction. We'll do some sitting practice. We'll do a little bit of reading, questions. There's a Q&A function on the Zoom program. So if you want to ask anything about the meditation practice or about the reading or about Buddhadharma, feel free. We'll answer some questions. We'll sit some more. I do want to encourage those of you who do have an interest in Dharma and Buddhism. I'm biased towards the Tibetan Buddhist lineages, because that's really all I know. If you're on Instagram, I post a lot of little teachings from various teachers, some living, some who have passed on my stories. So, look them up, get their books. There's tons of stuff online. On YouTube, there's teachings from the great lamas like Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, Dzongchen Khyentse Rinpoche, Khandro Rinpoche, Garchen Rinpoche. And like I do say often, I'm leading a study group of fellow students. You know what I mean? I'm passing on instructions that I've received, but I'm not a Buddhadharma teacher. So if there is interest, really go to that source. That's where you'll find, the authentic teachings. With that in mind, we're going to set our intentions using the 4 measurable prayers, which we do every class. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. And for those of you who are new, we say this every time we start the class. What I've been taught when I sit down to practice, there's 3 aspects of the practice. There's the setting the intentions, which encompasses that prayer we just said. There's the actual practice. So that could be meditation. That could be some kind of prayer. That could be mantra recitation, some kind of practices that your teacher has given you. And then the last component is the dedication, where you dedicate the merit created by the practice toward the benefit of all beings. And we will do that at the end of class. Now, some of you, if you're new, you may say, well, may all beings have happiness. I don't know if I want all beings to be happy. I think there's a lot of beings who maybe don't deserve happiness or who cause a lot of suffering. Part of what we try to work on in Buddhadharma is establishing a certain view, which is different than the view we've carried with us our whole lives, right? So we're trying to establish a more expansive view. When we say may all beings have happiness, we're not saying this evil sadist, we want him to be happy in his sadism. so he can continue that and do more harm. That's not what we're saying. We're talking about true happiness on a spiritual level, on an altruistic level, on a higher level. So when we say may all beings have happiness, if all beings truly had that kind of happiness, and a happiness that's a result of cultivating and receiving all those spiritual qualities like kindness and generosity and compassion and patience and those things. That's what we're talking about. If everybody, a more evolved level of happiness, right? Not just a avaricious one about accumulating power or wealth or those things. Because if everyone really did have that kind of happiness, think of what the world would be. That kind of happiness, meaning a more evolved, spiritual, higher vibration, as some people say. But then we're getting into dangerous territory, talking about vibrations. Although I could talk about vibrations with a lot of you. I'm sure lots of you have interesting things to say about that. So that's what is often in Buddhist practice, you talk about view, meditation, and action as practice, right? View, establishing that bigger view. A major component of Buddhism is the concept of non-duality. Now, we certainly don't live out of a place of non-duality. We don't act out of a place of non-duality. We have a very strong identity. We have to fulfill our needs and our obligations and things like that. But the teachings really try to establish non-duality as real ultimate reality. Our perspective, which is limited to our sense faculties and this being that we're in, perceives things as being dual, self and other, that kind of thing. But the Buddhists, through their studies and practice over centuries and the realization of the Buddha himself, really believe that non-duality, unity of all things, is really ultimate reality. So we establish a certain view to relate to that concept in some way, because it's very abstract unless you're enlightened like a Buddha, which I certainly am not, and probably most of you are not. It's almost like fake it till you make it, that kind of thing, which they say in like AA and certain kind of therapeutic communities. But it's setting the intention to do that, so our intention, is to benefit other beings, even if on a very worldly level we feel they may not be deserving of it. That's not what we're talking about. We're going above that to a more evolved platform, if you will, aspiring to that, because that's how you make progress, is by aspiring to to things that are beyond what your abilities, or beyond what you have. That every kind of progress that we make on any level of education or profession or skill, takes that kind of thing. And that's the same thing we're doing here. With that in mind, let's meditate. For those of you who knew, you can sit. I like to sit. You could on the floor. I have a little cushion. I'll tell you why in a second. Cross-legged is good. If you're flexible, a half lotus. If you're really flexible, full lotus. If you do full lotus, which I can't really do, which is that, that kind of thing. But it's really considered disrespectful to sit in full lotus in front of your teacher. Not me, but a real teacher, It's a good thing to know. So be comfortable. A cushion helps. It may help to get your hips in line with your knees or above your knees. You may need two cushions. Some people want to be quite a bit higher than their knees, have your hips quite a bit higher than your knees. You can use a chair if sitting on the floor is really not, your body has certain, limitations or whatever you're dealing with. A chair is fine. If you are in a chair, make sure your back is straight. And again, the hips should be either even or above the knees. So you don't want to be back in kind of this reclined position. And your feet should probably be on the floor. There you hear the noise right there. I'm sure you're hearing that. Nothing we can do about that today. Just hear it and let it go and continue to work what you're focusing on. So feet flat on the floor if you are in a chair. Totally acceptable if you are. So the back is straight, not rigid. Shoulders, back a little bit, not at attention, straight back, but just comfortable. You're straight, but not tight. Same with the head, the neck. The head is slightly tilted, not up at attention, slightly tilted, relaxed. The teeth are apart, but the lips are pretty kind of closed, not forced, but just gently closed. We use the analogy of the guitar string, right? Too loose, it doesn't make a sound. Too tight, it doesn't make a sound. Just enough tension, and it does make a sound. That's kind of what we're creating with our body and our mind to some extent too, but we'll talk about that later. Tibetan Buddhist tradition, eyes are open. And the gaze is not spaced out and unfocused, and it's not like intensely staring at something. It's resting lightly on whatever's in front of you. That could be the view out the window. It could be a blank wall. It could be a photograph of a teacher, a flower, something inspiring, a piece of art, whatever it is. Your gaze is lightly touching that. And then the arms are relaxed. The hands can be either like this on the knees. Some people like to do this kind of thing, touching the thumb to the ring finger. Could be open. Sometimes I like this, open palm, back of the hand, and curved. Thumbs touching, like a circle, and in the lap. Up to you. Comfort. The anchor of the practice is the breath. So we're going to put our attention on our breath. We're going to breathe through the nose. If we're not possible, if that's not possible because you're stuffed or whatever reason, breathe through your mouth. But if you can, just through the nose. Not a deep breath, not a shallow breath, but a normal, even, easy breath. So we're in the posture. Our backs are straight. Our bodies are relaxed, but upright, at attention, but not militaristic attention. And attention, I mean like awake. Eyes are resting on whatever's in front. Let's focus on the breath. Focus on that place between the nose and the upper lip. Take a few breaths, just focusing on that place and focusing on the in and out. Let's just take a few relaxed breaths. And just settle into that calm, settle into that breath, settle into that relaxed, peaceful state. Whatever's going on in your mind is okay. What's going to happen as you focus on your breath is you will think. Big preconception, misconception about meditation is it's about not thinking. That's not the case. You will think. It's about working with thought, right? So whatever thought comes into your mind, I hear them working somewhere. I hear the noise. Notice it and leave it where it is and go back to the breath. So it's almost like you're separating your awareness and your attention from your thoughts. That idea of mind looking at mind. So that it's that awareness. So if you can become aware of the fact you're thinking, now you're separating the thinker and the thought. There's there's the mind that's thinking the thought, then there's the mind that's aware of the fact that you're thinking. I know that's a heady, kind of complicated concept, but you will understand it the more you practice and it will come into play. It's that very awareness of the fact that we're thinking. That awareness is where the juice is of the practice, really. So we use the image and the analogy of the clear, crystal, blue sky, unstained, infinite, wide open clarity of empty blue sky. And the thought is like a cloud that arises from it and dissolves back into it. It has absolutely no permanence. It has really almost no essence, really. That's how the thought arises in the mind. And if we can become aware of the fact that we're thinking, we can just leave that thought where it is and go back to that clarity of mind and let the thought settle. It'll go. So you don't judge the thought as bad or good. You don't follow the thought and get involved in the story of the thought. You just notice the fact that you're thinking and go back to the breath. And when you go back to the breath, if you want to imagine that clarity of blue sky or that thought just dissolving, that may help you. For those of you who've been doing this a while, another metaphor, image that may help is, I was using this yesterday. I use it from time to time. Think of like you take a glass and you fill a glass from a muddy stream, a stream that's moving, but it's muddy, and you take it and you'll have a glass of muddy water. But then if you leave it still, if you let it be and let it be still, whatever's causing it to be muddy, that sediment, will sink slowly to the bottom. So you'll have sediment on the bottom of the glass, but the rest of the glass will be clear. I've heard that teaching many, many times about the mind. So we're in the posture. Our gaze is resting lightly. We're focusing on the breath as we do. And just imagine the chatter in your brain just like sinking down. And the thought comes up again. I hear somebody hammering something. Recognize it, recognize the thought, and imagine it sinking down. You can use either of those images, the sky or that glass of water. The important thing is to go back to the breath when you become aware of the thought. That's the anchor of the practice, almost like your mantra becomes back to the breath. Going back to the breath allows the thought to dissipate, settle on its own without you manipulating it. You're just leaving it be. With all these things in mind, let's practice. Let's sit for let's do 7 minutes. Okay, starting now. I may talk a little bit, I may not. If I do talk, or if you hear distracting noises, treat it like we just talked about the thought. Leave it where it is and go back to the breath. If you have to do that 100 times during this 7 minutes, that's okay. If you only get to do it one time during that 7 minutes, that's okay. But make that effort to do it at least once. Recognizing the thought, putting your awareness back on the breath. Let's go. Relax into the posture, relax into the breath. Whatever thought comes in, recognize it. Go back to the breath. Imagine it dissipating like a cloud or settling into the bottom. And relax into the clarity that remains. Because that clarity is the space between thoughts. That clarity is the awareness that recognizes thought. That clarity and that awareness, that's the gold, really. That's what we're trying to touch and tap into. Space between thought, almost. Okay. If you can make this kind of work a somewhat regular practice, it will definitely affect your life in a positive way. I mean, I can't see how it would not. It certainly won't hurt. Um, if you can make a little corner of your place, some place inspiring for you to sit, is very good. Whatever that is, you know, photographs, or a certain part of the room, or a cushion that you like, or incense, you know, and know that your intention to do this, is not just, it may just be because you feel stressed, or you have a lot of anxiety, whatever your reason to coming here is, or desiring to meditate is. That's okay. But know that also the practice, by engaging in this practice, really will bring benefit to other beings. It really will. And accept that, and know that when you go to sit, know that that's like what we say, the prayer that we say, setting that intention, know that that's real, because, like they say, a drop in the ocean becomes an ocean. If you're working on yourself to engage in the world in a more mindful way, that's going to have reverberations, ripple effect. Accept that, accept that with dignity, and embody that, and be proud of that. I'm going to read a little bit from someone named Kalu Rinpoche, Kal. This is about karma. Karma is one of the things that a lot of people have. Kalu Rinpoche has passed away, but has left a lot of really good teachings. Karma is something that a lot of us who are new to Buddhism or interested in it. Karma is something of a lot of interest, but I thought this was pretty cool. I got this off a Instagram site called Padmamala, Padmamalla. Fundamental consciousness can be compared to a ground that receives imprints or seeds left by our actions. Once planted, these seeds remain in the ground of fundamental consciousness until the conditions for their germinating and ripening have come together. In this way, they actualize their potential by producing the plants and fruits that are the various experiences of samsara. Samsara is worldly existence. The traces that actions leave in the fundamental consciousness are causes that, when favorable conditions present themselves, then result in a particular state of individual consciousness accompanied by its own specific experiences. In general, the collection of imprints left in this fundamental awareness by past actions serves to condition all states and experiences of individual consciousness. That is, that is what we are and everything we experience. The linking of the different steps of this process, from the causes, the initial acts, up to their consequences, present and future experiences, is called karma, or causation of actions. Karma is a Sanskrit word that literally means conditioned activity. This notion includes the entire gamut of activity, from the cause up to the consequence of an action. Karma is, therefore, activity, understood as being the series of causes and results of actions. Cause and effect. Karma often gets, kind of equated with this when comeuppance, just desserts. Like when someone does something bad, and then there's a result that's kind of equal to a result that's equal to the cause. People say, "Oh, that's karma." That he was a builder and he was cheap and he did the same thing in his own house and it fell apart. Whatever. It particularly became an issue of discussion here when the president, Trump, got COVID. So, well, that's karma because he handled the COVID badly. A lot of people thought, and there's a direct correlation between cause and effect, because he, he did he had certain failures dealing with the virus, and if he handled it better, maybe he wouldn't have got COVID. But it's not always just this punishment or reward, or it's everything. The fact that you're sitting here in front of a computer participating in this class is karma. That's your karma. Your karma has led you to this moment. That's not necessarily a punishment or reward. It's just, for whatever causes or whatever actions that you have set into motion has brought you here today. So it's a pretty big concept. It's not just a cosmic judicial system. It's also like, it's a much more vast, I think, topic, like collective karma, meaning we have collective karma to be born on the planet Earth at this time in history, all 9 billion of us. Let's see if we could take some questions, see if we can answer some questions. Do you ever experience when you feel an emotion starting to arise in you and you just look at the emotion but not the situation behind it, and is empty and dissipates? Yeah, I think when you're practicing, either on the cushion or in, even in life, because you're practicing to develop a certain amount of awareness that can really affect how you engage in the world, right? When you're sitting in this practice that we do, if an emotion comes, I kind of liken the emotions, if you talk about the sky metaphor, and the thought is a cloud, the emotion's like a storm, because the emotions have more energy behind it usually. And you can apply the same technique to it. That's in meditation practice. Now in life, right? We've spoken in the past about grief. This practice is not to deny you feeling emotion. Formal sitting practice, you're really trying to work with the mind and create those, that space and clarity. But in life, we need to process emotions, and we will feel emotion. Grief, which I say is kind of an aspect of love in a way, because you feel grief because of loss. You lost somebody that you had love for. I don't particularly find that an unhealthy emotion. It could turn unhealthy when you kind of get stuck in that for years, and can't move beyond and become paralyzed by it, and your life starts to, you start to suffer because of it. But happiness is an emotion, right? Joy, and these emotions are there. They're natural. Where we get into trouble are more negative emotions. Like anger can be a very negative emotion, because it can block us from seeing reality, seeing really what's going on, and we just kind of get colored by, like they say, see red. You get just colored and consumed by this emotion, and you may do something out of that anger that's very negative, like violence or things, or jealousy. Jealousy, you're kind of not really seeing reality. You're seeing your lack and someone else's gain. And it may cause you to sever a friendship or something like that, when that is not really maybe the best course of action. It's almost like the meditation's kind of giving us this delay system. Instead of being completely reactionary to situations, because emotions can allow that. Emotions have energy, it gives us this kind of little delay where we can think about how we want to respond, how we want to act. I was talking about view, meditation, and action. So the action being the final stage of that. And we want to act in the world, because actions have big consequences. That's karma, right? Actions create karma. We want to create positive karma. So we need to create and commit positive action. Define non-duality. So if you go to my IGTV, Session 11 of Meditation 102 is a class with Dr. Vesna Wallace, where she explains the concept of emptiness, which also, really kind of falls into non-duality. Non-duality. So, okay, if someone's sitting next to me, it's me and this person next to me, right? Buddhists want to look at reality, physical world even, and feel that the more, how do you say this? The real essential nature of reality is that we're not apart. So if say you stand on the moon and you look at the earth, right? You don't see 9 billion people and 300 countries and 7 continents or anything like that. You see this big blue ball. Now that's a reality. Which one is real? Is more real? Which one really is definitive? Is it the fact that it's made up of 9 billion people, or the fact that it's one world, say? So that earth, right, is non-dual. It's just the earth. On a molecular level, right, on a quantum physical level, we are not solid beings, right? So if someone's sitting next to me, that's a collection of vibrations and particles and quantum material, as well as I am. And in essence, we're not really separate. We're kind of existing in the same matrix of energy, of physical substance, So Buddhist view is that ultimate reality is that there is no duality, that reality itself on a physical level, on a mental level, is union, is one. That's a very, very huge concept, and it's completely antithetical in many ways to how we've evolved as beings and how we see the world. But realizing that as the nature of reality is probably what enlightenment is. And that becomes your embodiment and perception, that becomes how you perceive existence in the world and everything, from a non-dual perspective. That's an extremely evolved state of being. But the Buddhists believe that that is ultimate reality. Now, I don't explain this concept because it's a very difficult one well at all. But if you go to session 11, Meditation 102, it's on IGTV. It's also on the YouTube channel, which is Michael Imperioli Meditation 101. Dr. Vesna Wallace, who's a brilliant scholar, Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist scholar, actually Mongolian Buddhist scholar, goes into this in great detail and will help you understand that a lot more. Am I better off going to sleep late? Where I am in the world, it's late and I'm sleepy. Is meditating this late at night still worthwhile? Am I better off going to sleep and meditating in the morning? Either one. The point is really to make this somewhat of a regular practice. So whatever's going to facilitate that. Is it okay to change meditation methods during a session? When I hear sirens, it disturbs me and I switch from focusing on my breath to sending loving kindness to all those involved in that emergency. When the siren stops, I try to go back to my breath. Is it okay to switch back and forth between those techniques? Yes, 100%. Hearing sirens and focusing on your breath and sending loving kindness to those involved in that emergency is great practice. Excellent, yeah. How long are you able to stay in the space between thoughts? That's up to you, and that's up, and that is gonna evolve and change the more you practice. I sometimes find it difficult to practice daily. If you have any suggestions, help us build up to a daily meditation session. Create a space that you want to be in. I mean, a physical space. Create a space that's inspiring, that's yours, that you feel you want to be in, you want to go to, that'll be conducive for you for sitting. That's one reason. The other thing is to really maybe really look a little deeper into your intention on why you want to practice. like I said, you know, if you're thinking about being, you know, this practice is connected to being a benefit to all beings, that's a big responsibility in a way, or a big commitment, but a really good one and a worthwhile one. How do you deal with the stresses of day-to-day life, having so many things on your plate, but trying to be mindful of one's own existence? However you can, you know? I mean, part of it's practice of, you know, studying Buddhism and practicing this, you know, how that's, you know, that's one way, you know? I mean, eliminate things that you feel are, have kind of outgrown their use in your life, bad habits, whatever it is, smoking or drinking too much or eating bad or whatever, you know what I mean? Sometimes if stress is, you know, causing, you know, kind of some kind of clinical level of anxiety and neuroses or depression, you may need to talk to a professional. Can you talk about mudras while meditating? Malas? No, mudras I can't talk about. That's something that a teacher would talk about. Mala is just a prayer bead. She gets tangled with this other thing that I wear. These are prayer beads, and they're used really as counters. That's really what a mala is. What is 108? So when you some practices you accumulate a certain amount of mantra, and each one is one. But there's something about having it in your hand that connects you to your practice, especially like if you're walking, you hold it in your hand, you're doing some mantra, or prayer, something connecting the body to the mind. To me, it's something that it's almost like a post-it. It reminds you of the fact that you can practice. You know? Could one of the ways karma be interpreted be through acknowledging the actions, decisions, or experiences of parents and grandparents? Only in how they've interacted with you. You know, it's obviously your karma to be the grandson or daughter of whoever your grandparent was. That's your karma. So it's your karma to have inherited certain genetic material through your DNA from them. Um, but you're only inheriting karma from them that has directly kind of influenced you. So if your grandfather uh, gave birth to your mother and they were in New York and that's where you're born, your karma, you kind of, they have facilitated that karma for you to be born there. But the idea of like a sin of a father ripening on the child, that's not necessarily karmic, you know, or necessarily something that will happen. Unless, you know, if it's say the father robbed the bank and bought the house with money that was robbed, and then the government confiscates the house, and now you're homeless as a kid. There's an obvious correlation between the sin of the father and the child. You know what I mean? But on a kind of, I mean, that's I think how karma operates between generations that way. You know. How do you handle thoughts of planning, writing down to clear mind beforehand? Well, we need thoughts of planning to plan stuff. You know what I mean? Um, Listen, if you're sitting in meditation and some great thought occurs to you, I would suggest writing it down rather than saying, I can't think, I'm meditating. You know what I'm saying? Uh, if you're creative and you come up with an idea, I mean, I write, and sometimes whenever I come up with some idea comes to me that I think is valuable, I'll write it down no matter what I'm doing if I can. Um, I hope that makes sense. What books or reading can you recommend for someone new to Buddhism? The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama is a good one. Is karma considered objectively neutral? I don't think karma has a, you know, karma is, I don't think it can be taken out of context. Hoping to find more subjectively positive ways of looking at life consequences rather than dwelling on what has happened and trying to appreciate and accept what is. Well, I mean, the good news is you have the moment now where you can create positive karma, no matter where you're at in your life right now. That's the good news. I mean, I guess that's why you're here, because you somewhere in you want to create good karma. I am paraplegic. I'm new to this, and I'm fine. I'm having many thought clouds about keeping my knees apart and getting the correct position. I imagine practicing would help. You know, whatever position will make you comfortable is good. You know, you have to kind of allow yourself to find what works. You know, the posture that I'm, you know, that I show you is the basic one. But if that's not possible, whatever's going to work, you know, and whatever's going to allow you to work with the mind. So practicing will help. You know, habituation. The more you do this, the it's. I'll be honest. I've been meditating for a while. You know, a number of years, and you know, the mind thinks. That's what it does. We're working with our thoughts. It's not like I sit and I just am in this state of samadhi with no thoughts or anything like that, you know. But accepting that and knowing that is good, because you know you're not judging yourself. You're not judging, you know, failure or success. I'm doing good, I'm doing bad. You're just like, this is what the mind does and this is what it is, and it's just about working with it. Have you found a connection between gained awareness through your meditation practice and the ability to let go more freely? I have, but I can't separate it from the Buddhadharma and teachings of Buddha. You know, I came to Buddhism and then meditated. I didn't go to meditation and then discover Buddhism. So whatever you're saying, like a gained awareness, being able to let go, it's part and parcel meditation, but also, you know, Buddhadharma. What are the main benefits you experience from an increased amount of time and space between thoughts? Being able to act and react and interact with the world with, you know, with a bit more mindfulness, rather than, you know, being just uh, led by emotion. You know, I'm new to this. Why is keeping your eyes open more effective than closing them? I find it easier to focus on the meditative process with my eyes closed. I find the eyes open are good because we're trained. You know, we're practicing meditation for living, not so much for sleeping. You know, so getting used to meditating with the eyes open is easier to bring the practice into daily life, because that's how we, you know, driving a car, you want those eyes open. So when that guy cuts you off, instead of like chasing him to curse him out, you know, you may take a breath and just kind of, you know, give some space rather than call, you know, anger can make you drive very dangerously. At least I've noticed that. Buddhists can do many things to end suffering, such as follow the Buddhist teachings and meditating. But what about animals? How come they come to this world to suffer so much? Karma again, you know, and sometimes, and that goes into the, you know, theories of reincarnation, you know, and the belief in that, and the fact that you can be reborn in the form of an animal, and that animals can create both negative and positive karma, and be, you know, um, it's actually to be in Buddhist point of view, to be born as a human is very, very, very advantageous and not that easy. It's much easier to be born as an animal or an insect or something like that. So just the fact that you are born a human means you've created some kind of good karma in a past life. Although there's no guarantee that you're going to continue in this form in the next life. It depends on the karma that you create. Someone's asking about mantra. Mantra really has to be given to you by a teacher. Is it malpractice to meditate to music? You know, I don't think you need to look at anything as malpractice. The thought of listening to little Nina Simone sounds like heaven to me. The problem is that it's often two different things. Meditating and you know, you may wind up just listening to Nina Simone rather than meditating. That's kind of the problem. You get lost in the quality of Nina Simone's voice, which I do very often. I love it, but I don't do it when I meditate. I keep those things separate, meditating and listening to music. You'll get into the story of the song, you know? So those two things can be at odds in a way. You can try it, you know, but I think the point of meditation is not to listen to music, it's to work with your thoughts. But listen, there's no, a lot of people, what I've discovered is Buddhism is not this religion with all these rules and, you know, dictating you must not do this or you should do this. It's really not about that at all. I mean, obviously the Buddha taught the Eightfold Path, which deals with ethical behavior, but it's really very basic sanity. You know what I mean? About, like, you know, lying and violence and killing and stealing and things like that, sexual misconduct. Um, and that's because Buddha was teaching us to create good karma, right? Rather than negative karma in the world. You know, it's many Buddhists eat meat, and there's no rule in Buddhism you must not eat meat or you must you know, Buddha is not worship, is not a god. It was not worshipped as a god or those things. You know, so, you know, find what works. Listen, if you listen to Nina Simone and meditate and it really deepens your practice, I mean, who am I to say anything? How does one come in contact with a teacher, especially now in these strange times of COVID? Through the magic of the internet. And I mean, how did you come in contact with me? Through Instagram and whatever. So several students have taken refuge. Taking refuge means officially becoming a Buddhist, where you take vows of refuge and say that I take refuge in the Buddha, which is the Buddha himself, but also your teacher. The Dharma, which are the teachings, and the Sangha, which is the congregation and group of other Buddhists. You're taking refuge within those things until you reach enlightenment. That means you officially become a Buddhist under the guidance of a teacher. So you usually take refuge with an authentic teacher. And Garchen Rinpoche, for instance, who's my teacher, who I took refuge with, has offered refuge online, virtual, I think through Zoom or YouTube or something. So I just did a retreat 2 weeks ago for a week that normally I only did in Arizona at the temple, you know, with Garchen Rinpoche, and we did it, you know, and everyone was home. We did it through YouTube, so you can make contact. You could take refuge, do certain practices and vows that normally would not be possible unless you're in the presence of the Lama. You can do this. Teachers are offering this stuff online, which is really valuable at this time. You know, I think it's really cool. So this is a godsend, you know, a blessing. What if I feel discomfort while practicing meditation? How do I deal with that, even in the correct position? I mean, I think that's very normal. You know, it's not easy if you're not used to it, sitting kind of cross-legged like this in this position, being still. You know, listen, if you have to move and adjust and, you know, change a little bit, shift your weight, that's okay. I do think it will get. I think it'll get easier with time. Okay. Oh boy. All right, let's do a brief meditation and then dedicate and close. Let's do 5 minutes. And I'm not saying anything this time. Let's go. Excellent. All right, so let's dedicate the merit. So whatever merit we create from this is not just for ourselves. We like to dedicate it to the benefit of all beings. Like we said before, one drop in the ocean becomes an ocean. So one drop is not so powerful, but the ocean certainly is. And we're kind of, whatever merit we gain from that, we're putting in that bank, that cosmic bank for all beings, right? So let's say this dedication of merit. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. So we're dedicating the merit from today to the benefit of all beings. It's almost like you're supercharging the results of your meditation. It reminds me of that great Public Image Limited song, One Drop. If you haven't heard it, you should hear it. Thanks to Nick Solidio, our producer, who this class would not be possible without his efforts and kindness. So, see you next week. Thank you for being here today.